So you probably heard of this chemical called PFAS. Maybe you've seen some attorney advertising asking you to file a claim. Maybe you've read about it in the news. What PFAS is, it's a chemical. It's been used in water-resistant clothing. It's been used in non-stick pans. And most notably, it's been used in firefighting foam that the military uses. It's considered a forever chemical, which means that once it enters the environment, it doesn't break down. So it stays there indefinitely. So it gets into the drinking water, it gets into the groundwater. People consume it. In fact, most people around the world have some level of PFAS in their system. And it also causes a variety of health effects. So you could get service connected for a condition resulting from your PFAS exposure in the military. And that is what we're going to discuss today. PFAS and filing a service-connected disability claim related to PFAS. Let's get into it. So as with any service-related claim, the first element necessary to win that claim is to show that you have some sort of disability or disease or illness. So the first step here is to identify what disability or disease or illness you believe you could have from PFAS. It is not enough to be exposed to a chemical to get VA disability compensation. I believe that is a big misconception in the VA world. It doesn't matter what the chemical is. It doesn't matter if it was burn pits or Agent Orange or PFAS. Exposure in itself is not enough. You have to also show that you have a resulting disability. Step 2, and we'll get into the exposure here at the end of the video, but step 2 is next showing that that condition is as likely as not, or there's 50-50 chance, related to your PFAS exposure. The VA does not have a presumptive list of conditions they believe related to PFAS. There is some coming legislation, but as far as I know, that legislation is stalled in Congress. I haven't heard much about it since last year. So no presumptive list like there is for the PACT Act or Agent Orange. You actually have to produce evidence showing that your condition is related to PFAS. The good news is there has been a study done that has found a probable link between certain conditions and PFAS exposure. And this study is called the C8 Science Panel. And I'll put a link to the C8 Science Panel's results in the description. I'll also put a copy of the link here on the screen for you. So the C8 Science Panel is considered the gold standard. And it has found a probable link between PFAS and testicular cancer and kidney cancer, thyroid disease, which includes hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, ulcerative colitis, as well as preeclampsia in pregnant women. So if you have one of these conditions, you could use the C8 Science Panel to help prove that your condition is linked to PFAS. So the study found the probable link, which I would argue is equal to at least a 50%, if not 51%. So it meets that VA standard and showing that your condition is linked to PFAS exposure. Now, if you don't have one of these conditions, testicular cancer, kidney cancer, ulcerative colitis, thyroid disease, or preeclampsia when you're pregnant, that doesn't mean you're out of luck. The science isn't well developed over PFAS exposure, but you could still win your claim if you have evidence, medical evidence, that your condition is related to PFAS. So what can you do? So you're probably not going to have much luck with the VA examiners if one of your conditions is not part of that C8 Science Panel. So you'll probably have to go get your own expert medical opinion, and that opinion should give a well-reasoned rationale and backed up by science and medical principles of why they think your condition is related to PFAS. So as long as you have that medical link, that 50-50 nexus opinion, then you could still link your condition to PFAS exposure, even if it's not supported by this C8 Science Panel I'm mentioning. So you've identified your condition. you have either a condition on the C8 Science Panel, or you've gone your own medical nexus opinion. The last step here is probably the hardest part, and that's showing that you've actually been exposed to PFAS. Now, yes, you're going to say, Ed, there's a ton of military bases out there that are contaminated with PFAS. We'll get into that here in a minute. But probably one of the easier ways to show your exposure to PFAS is by showing that you used aqueous firefighting foam in the military. So a lot of sailors who were stationed on ships were trained in firefighting. So they would have used it. Air rescue crews use it. Cooks, even military, use it. Basically, anybody who had to deal with and learn how to put out fires probably used aqueous firefighting foam, which contains PFAS. So what you have to do is either show through your military records that you went through firefighting training, or through a lay statement that you used firefighting foam as part of your MOS duties. Now, if you didn't use aqueous firefighting foam, that's okay. As I stated before, there's a laundry list of military sites that have been shown to be contaminated with PFAS. So one is through the Department of Defense itself. And I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a link on the screen here. They have an interactive map that you could go to and see what military sites actually have that contamination. Another agency, the Environmental Working Group, also publishes a nice interactive map. I'll again put those links here in the description on the screen. So take a look at those maps. They'll show which sites have been determined to have PFAS exposure. Now, here's some key things you're looking for. The EPA currently says that PFAS amount of 70 parts per trillion is safe or acceptable. Now, they're actually trying to lower that number because they're realizing how terrible this chemical is. But look on these interactive maps. They should break down the exposure by groundwater and drinking water, and then give how much PFAS was actually found in that water. So if it was above that 70 parts per trillion or 70 ppt, then there's a good chance that you were exposed to a harmful amount. Pay attention to groundwater and drinking water. There's a difference. I mean, you weren't necessarily exposed to the groundwater in the military base, but if the drinking water has higher than 70 parts per trillion, then there's probably a good argument that, yeah, you were exposed to PFAS, because everyone drinks water. Unless you were buying all your water in bottles, you probably were exposed. Groundwater is a little bit different. You don't necessarily drink groundwater, although sometimes the groundwater is used for drinking water. Also, sometimes the groundwater is used to shower, cook, and for other activities that you wouldn't use drinking water for. It's not necessarily potable water. So, I mean, these claims take a little bit of research to kind of figure out, well, what was I exposed to? Showing exposure to groundwater, they use different water to shower. Maybe there's irrigation you're exposed to. Maybe the groundwater is close to the topsoil and you did training there and you've been exposed that way. There's a variety of ways you could have been exposed. The key here is to get the VA to recognize how you're exposed. So write them a statement saying, hey, I drank the water, I showered there, we had issues with the irrigation, we used to train in standing water. Your statement could be powerful here in proving that you were exposed. Now, another way to show exposure, which the VA doesn't really like, in fact, it could be a difficult way to show PFAS exposure, is through blood work. I used to do this with my clients, send them to get blood work, come back, that shows the PFAS levels in their blood. The problem is almost everyone has PFAS levels in their blood, and there hasn't really been anybody to say this is the safe amount of PFAS in your blood and this isn't. But I still think getting blood work could be helpful, because some people have way more PFAS in their blood than other people. And if you could link that in addition to being on a base that had high PFAS exposure, I think that's good evidence for your claim. All right, guys, I know that's a lot I went through, but let me go over the three main points here again. One, you have some sort of disability. You have more than exposure, okay? Two, you have a condition that has been linked to PFAS, either through a study or through your own expert opinion. And three, you're able to show that as likely as not, you are exposed to PFAS while on your active duty, either through groundwater, drinking water, or another way. These claims can be difficult, guys, so if you get denied, don't get frustrated, don't give up, get some help. An attorney might be able to help you get a better medical opinion or maybe help prove that exposure. That does it, guys. Thanks for liking, thanks for sharing, thanks for subscribing, thanks for all your comments. I really appreciate it. And as always, you have the power to change your VA claim.